Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, dear students. So here we are going to start with 1.5, that is the chapter Mrs. ADIS. So in this we will deal with first icebreakers and then introduction of the chapter we'll see, and then we'll start with the explanation part of the chapter. So here there are some icebreakers activities. So the very first one is share your opinions, feelings with your partner about a stranger who has a villainous look or appearance. It happens sometimes after seeing someone we get scared or something like that, or we get a look or the kind of image of villain and all these things. So basically that's what you have to describe, that how do you exactly feel when you see the stranger who is kind of a villainous look if he gives you. So that's what you have to write, that what exactly do you feel. So there are 4 boxes in that you have to fill. So the what exactly we feel, we feel scared, anxious, frightened and threatened at the same time, right? Now the another one, recall your favorite crime story on TV. Discuss with your friend how you could prevent the villain thief from committing the crime theft. Okay, so basically you have to do this question on your own, because you have to recall your favorite crime story which you see on the television. So and you have to write it. Okay, if you have seen any crime getting done or any criminal doing something wrong, so how you could have prevent that, that's what you have to write. Now the another question, the feeling of a person when he commits a mistake are. So basically, a person, whoever he or she is, when they commit any mistake, so what basically they do they feel, that's what we have to write. The first one is already given, he tries to justify it. And after that, what we can write, he tries to blame others for the mistake. Some people, what they do, he feels guilty for committing the mistake. He feels angry for having committed the mistake. He feels sad because he realizes the consequences of his mistakes as soon as he commits it. So there are different people and they will have different feelings, and that's what it's given. The person who makes mistake or commits crime should be punished because. Now if someone commit any mistake, so they should be punished. Why they should be punished, that's what we have to write. So the first one, it will bring him to justice. It will make him realize his mistake. It will ensure that the victims of the crime receive justice. It will help him transform himself into a better person. It will certify that the society is governed by law and order, which is essential for the peaceful existence of the human population. Now, here is the introduction of the chapter. Sheila K. Smith was an English novelist and poet. Many of her novels were set in the borderlands of Sussex and Kent in the English regional tradition. Her work, The End of House of Allard, became a bestseller. So now basically this chapter, this part have been written by Sheila K. Smith, who is an English novelist and poet at the same time. And many of her novels were basically written or set around the borderlands of Sussex. Sussex will come to know about the place basically in the chapter. And her book, The End of the House of Allard, this is her book which became the bestseller. The story is about a peasant woman who finds a desperate young man at her doorstep, pleading of her to give him protection from the police. He had been poaching on the nearby estate and in panic had killed one of the gamekeepers. Now basically this story is about a peasant woman, okay, and that woman finds a man, a desperate man on her doorstep, who is trying to please her or trying to plead her to give him shelter or help him so that he will be protected from the people who is following him. And in a panic state, he by mistake he killed someone. So that's what the whole story is about. Now moving towards this chapter, Mrs. Addis. In northeast Sussex, a great tongue of land runs into Kent. It is a land of woods, the old hammer woods of the Sussex iron industry, and among the woods gleam the hammer ponds. Now Sussex is basically, as it's a country, okay, in the south of England. Okay, and tongue of land is basically a very a kind of stretched area, a long area So now it is a land of woods, the hammer woods. So it's been called as a hammer woods because, like, to describe the forest, basically it's used where, there are woods and everything where basically the iron, used to made. So that's what it's called. And hammer ponds, basically it's used for a pond, basically. Okay, so now it's the whole story is set somewhere around the Sussex. Okay, and around the tongue of land, or it's been called as the hammer woods or the hammer ponds. So, owing to the thickness of the woods, the road that passes Mrs. Addis' cottage is dark long before the field beyond. Now, basically, it's basically given a view that how exactly the place is, what's the the whole look and everything. Now what it's telling, that there are the thickness of the woods, and the road that going towards the cottage of Mrs. Addis, it's quite dark and long. That night there was no twilight and no moon, only a few pricks of fire in the black sky above the trees. Pricks of fires mean is basically used for the stars. Okay, so what she's saying over here, that night was dark. Basically, there were only twilight was there. No moon was there on the sky. Only there were pricks of fire, and the sky was completely black above the trees. But what the darkness hide, the silence revealed. Obviously, like, if there is a darkness, so we won't be able to see anything, right? But if there is a complete silence, so whatever the darkness is trying to hide, that will be ultimately revealed by the silence, right? Means if you even breathe in the complete silence, if you even breathe, it will, the other person will easily be able to hear your breathing even, right? And that's what it is all about. That's what she's saying, that whatever the darkness was hiding, the silence was revealing everything. Means even if someone walks, that will be revealed that yes, someone is walking. In the absolute stillness of the night, windless and clear, every sound was distinct, intensified. So what she's saying here, like, there was complete stillness, means everything was, it's feeling like, at a pause. And there was no movements, there was no wind, it was completely clear. And whatever the sound was coming, it was completely distinct, and people could understand that what sound it is exactly. And that silence was making every sound intensified. The distant bark of a dog at Delmondon sounded close at hand, and the men who walked on the road could hear the echo of his own footsteps following him like a knell. Now, what she's saying over here, there was the dogs were barking in Delmondon, basically the nearby village from that place, basically. So even the dogs were barking there, so it he could hear that person, like, whoever passing through this place could hear the sound of barking of the dog, basically. And it was feeling as if it's very close to that place. And as the man was walking over there through the road, he could hear his own echo of his footsteps, and it was feeling like, like some clearly the sound of his own footsteps. He could hear that. Every now and then he made an effort to go more quietly, but the roadside was a mess of thorns, and their crackling and rustling were nearly as loud as the thud of his feet on the road. Besides, they made him go slowly, and he had no time for that. So basically, he was putting so much efforts in. Why? Because he was not he did not want his own sound of the that to make a noise or something like that. Because what he wanted no one to hear that he is passing through that place. He did not want people to know that someone is going through the place, or someone is walking here, because he was trying to hide his presence over there, and that's what he wanted. So he was trying to go more quietly, but as there were the small plants were there, and the woods and everything, the bushes were there, so that ultimately revealed his presence, and whatever he was trying to hide was clearly, revealing everything. And so he was trying to walk slowly, but he was also trying to be in a hurry at the same time. So it was getting so complicated for him, because he wanted to walk fast, but it was creating lots of echo, and then he couldn't walk slowly because he had to reach somewhere as soon as possible. And then when he came to Mrs. Addis' cottage, he paused a moment. Only a small patch of grass lay between it and the road. And he looked in at the lighted, uncurtained window. He could see Mrs. Addis stooping over the fire, taking some pot or kettle of it. Now he almost reached near to the Addis' cottage, and when he reached near to that, he stopped. He paused over there for a moment, and there was only, the grass and a road between him and her cottage. So he stopped there for a while, and he saw that the window was uncurtained, and through that window he could easily see that Mrs. Addis is doing something, and she's putting a pot on the a kettle on the stove. Basically, he saw that. And then he hesitated and seemed to wonder. He was a big, heavy working man, not successful judging by the poverty of his appearance. For a moment he made as if he would open the window. Then he changed his mind and went to the door inside instead. Now what he did, he was looking from the window, and then he was a big, heavy working man basically, and not successful at the same time. So for a moment it felt as if he will go through the window, but he changed his mind all of a sudden, and then he went from the door inside the house. He went through the door. He did not knock, but walked straight in. The women at the fire turned quickly round. "What, you Peter Crouch?" she said. "I didn't hear you knock." Now what happened later? He didn't knock. He directly entered inside the house, and when he entered, that lady, that means Mrs. Addis. So this lady is basically Mrs. Addis, and this man who was walking through the road and just now entered inside the house of Mrs. Addis is Peter Crouch. So basically when he came, so basically what we came to know that Mrs. Addis knows Peter Crouch, right? So now what Mrs. Addis asked, that you Peter Crouch, I didn't hear you knocking. So basically he didn't knock only because he doesn't want people to know about his presence, or like to know that someone is there. So he did not knock, he directly entered inside the house, and that's what she asked, that I didn't hear you knocking. So what he replied, I didn't knock, ma'am, I didn't want anybody to hear. So what he replied, that I didn't knock, and I don't want people to hear the knocking of the door. How's that? I'm in trouble. His hands were shaking a little. What have you done? Now she asked that how's that, and she asked about the situation and conditions. So what he replied, that I'm in a trouble. That's what he said, and he was shaking, and then she asked that what have you done? So what he replied, I shot a man, Mrs. Addis. You? Yes, I shot him. You killed him? I don't know. Then there was a conversation going on between Mrs. Addis and Peter Crouch. So what he said when she asked that what have you done, so what he replied, that I shot a man, and that's what he said. And she was in shock. She asked, you? So what he replied, yes, I shot him. So then what she asked, that you killed him? So what he replied, I don't know. Means he shot a person, but he don't know that is he alive or is he dead. He doesn't know about it. And for a moment there was silence in the small stuffy kitchen. Then the kettle boiled over, and Mrs. Addis mechanically put it at the side of the fire. So then for a while in the room there was complete silence in the kitchen, and then she was the whatever the things, the kettle that she put on the stove, that was boiling, and then she took it off and kept it aside for a while. And then she was a small, thin woman with a brown head, a hard face on which the skin had dried, and innumerable small hair-like wrinkles. She was probably not more than 42, but life treats some women hard in the agricultural districts of Sussex, and Mrs. Addis' life had been harder than most. So basically there is a, the appearance of a Mrs. Addis that we are getting over here, and about her life. So basically what it's telling us, that she was a small and a very thin woman, and at the same time what it's telling us, that she was brown, and her face was hard, and at the same time the skin had been dried, and there were innumerable small hair like wrinkles. And what she's saying over here, that she was, probably not more than 42, but she looked like more than that, because in Sussex, the agricultural district, which is called, treats the women, harder. What do you want me to do for you, Peter Crouch? She said a little sourly. So she asked that, what do you want me to do? Let me stay here a bit. Is there no way you can put me till they have gone? So what he asked, that just, let me stay here for a while. Is there any place where you can hide me for a while before they have gone from here? Who's they? The keepers. Now she asked, who they? About whom are you talking? Who are they? So he replied, the keepers. Oh, you have had a quarrel with the keepers, have you? So she asked, means you had a fight or a quarrel with the keepers. Have you done that? Yes, I was down the cinder wood seeing if I could pick up anything, and keepers found me. There were 4 to 1, so I used my gun. And then basically he's describing the situation, what exactly had happened, and that's what he's telling right now, that basically cinderwood is basically a name of a wood, basically. Okay, so he was down to the cinderwood, and he was searching if he could pick something, like as if to burn, or like instead of coal or something. So he was searching for something, if he could pick something. So the keepers caught him, and they found that someone is there, and as if someone is trying to steal something. That's what the keepers thought, and they tried to catch him. And then so he tried to protect himself, and in the basically when he tried to protect him, so he shot the gun. Through the gun he shot, and he used his gun. Then I ran for it. They are after me. They can't be far off now. So what he said, they are just somewhere near about this area only. They are searching for me, and they are not so far now. Mrs. Addis did not speak for a moment. Crouch looked at her beseechingly. So Mrs. Addis had nothing to speak, and she was just quiet for a while, and Peter Crouch was looking at her in a very appealing way. You might do it for Tom's sake, he said. You haven't been an over good friend to Tom, snapped Mrs. Addis. Now, what he said, please do it at least for the Tom's sake. So basically, Tom is Mrs. Addis' son, and a very good friend of Peter Crouch. So what he's asking her to do, that for the sake of Tom, at least please do it for me. And what she replied, that you have never been a very good friend for him. And that's what she replied. But Tom has been a very good friend to me. He would want you to stand by me tonight. But so what when she said that you have never been a good friend for him, for Tom, so what Peter Crouch said, but Tom have been always a very good friend towards me, and he always stood by me. So even if tonight he would have been here, he would have stood by me. Well, I won't say he wouldn't, for Tom always thought better of you than you deserved. Maybe you can stay till he comes home tonight, then we can hear what he says about it. Then what she replied when he said if you would have been here, he would have stood by me. So what she replied, well, I won't deny with it, because he always did many things for you. He always thought better for you. Even how much you deserved, he did more than that. So you may still you may wait here, you may stay here, until he comes. And then whenever he comes tonight, so he will decide what he has to do and what he has to say. He will be up at work for an hour yet, and the coast will be clear by then. I can get away out of the country. So what he said, he will be there at work for an hour, and then whenever he will be coming, I will be leaving, and I can get away out of the country. Where you will go? I don't know. There is time to think of that. So she asked that, where will you go? means she basically asked that, do you have any plan or something like that? So what he said, I don't know, but I have time to think about that. Well, you can think of it in here, she said dryly, opening a door which led from kitchen into the small shed at the back of the cottage. They will never guess you are there, especially if I tell them I haven't seen you tonight. So now basically what she said, well, you think about it and you can think of it here. She basically shown a way from the kitchen towards the other part of the house. There was basically the shed, which is there at the back of the cottage. And what she said, they will never guess that you are here, and especially if I will tell them that I haven't seen you tonight, so they won't be able to guess anything. You are a good woman, Mrs. Addis. I know I'm not worth your standing by me, but maybe I would have been different if I had a mother like Tom's. So what he said, you are a very good woman. The Peter Crouch said to Mrs. Addis, and what he said, you know what? I know I'm not worth standing of you to stand by me and everything, but if I would have mother like you, or the mother like the Tom's mother, means indirectly he's talking about her only, so I would have been a better person. She did not speak, but shut the door, and he was in darkness save for a small ray of light that came through one of the cracks. By this light, he could see her moving to and fro, preparing Tom's supper. So basically, she did not say anything. She did not speak anything else, and she shown the way to him and shut the door. He went inside, and she shut the door. And then there was complete darkness over there where he was there, where he went inside. But there was a ray of a light that was coming through the crack. That there was a crack in the wall, so through that crack there was coming a ray of a light, and through which he could see that that Mrs. Addis is moving ahead and then coming back by this light, and he saw that she was preparing supper for Tom. In another hour, Tom would be home from Iron Latch Farm, where he worked every day. Peter Crouch trusted Tom to help him, for they had been friends when they went together to the national school at Lamberhurst, and since then the friendship had not been broken by their very different characters and careers. So what basically he's thinking, that he would be coming after an hour and from the Iron Latch Farm where he works every day. So what he's thinking, Peter Crouch is basically trusting Tom a lot, because they had been friends since from the school time, national school at Lamberhurst. They studied together over there, and from that time only they are friends, and the friendship had not been broken because of their different characters or the careers. Peter Crouch huddled down upon the sack that filled one corner of the shed. So he basically adjusted himself on the sack which was there at the corner of a shed. A delicious smell of cooking began to come through from the kitchen, and he hoped Mrs. Addis would not deny him a share of the supper when Tom came home, for he was very hungry and he had a long way to go. So basically, and then all of a sudden a very delicious smell started coming inside, and he felt hungry, and what he was hoping, that Mrs. Addis will not deny to give some of the share of this supper to me when the Tom will come home, and when he will be having the supper, she will share it with me also. And as he was very hungry and he has a long way to go, he had fallen into a kind of helpless doze when he was roused by the sound of footsteps on the road. For a moment, his poor heart nearly choked him with its beating. So basically, he was in a bit tired. He was about to fall asleep, or in a bit of different way he was. Then all of a sudden he rose because of the footsteps that he heard, and he felt as if his heart choked. The beating of heart had been choked. That's what he felt. They were the keepers. They had guessed where he was, with Mrs. Addis, his old friend's mother. He had been a fool to come to the cottage. Now basically all of these things he is imagining, or as if he is watching in his dreams or something like that the keepers caught him, and with the help of Mrs. Addis they caught him, and I have been the fool to come over here. this is all things are happening in his imaginations or the dreams. It's not happening in real. That's what he's guessing. Nearly losing his self-control, he shrank into the corner, shivering, half sobbing. But the footsteps went by. The next minute, Mrs. Addis struck her head into the shed, and all of this thing was happening. And then the footsteps went away, and then Mrs. Addis came, knocking the door, and she came inside. And that was keepers. She said shortly, I saw them go by. They had lanterns. Maybe it would be better if you slipped out now and went towards Canceran. You would miss them that way and get over to Kent. There is a London train that comes from Tunbridge Wells at 10 tonight. So basically, Canceran is basically a town, okay, near to the railway station. So what she is saying, then she came, and this is not happening in imagination or the dream, it's happening for real. Now she came and she said, yes, they were the keepers. And what she said, that they are having the lanterns in their hand and they are after you, they are searching for you, and it's better you go and you run away from here or else you will be caught. And what she said, she suggested him to go and take the train for London, that is from the Tunbridge Wells, and that train will come at 10 tonight. That would be a fine thing for me, ma'am, but I haven't the price of a ticket on me. So what he said, yeah, that's a fine thing, but the problem is I don't have money. So how will I go? She went to one of the kitchen drawers. Here is 7 shillings. It will be your fare to London and a bit over. So she went inside the kitchen and opened one of the drawer, and then she came out with the money in her hand, and she handed over it to him, and she said, here are the 7 shillings, basically the currency, like the way we are having rupees, so it's their currency. So there were 7 shillings, and what she said, here is a fare of a London train, and even a bit more than that, so that you can have it. So I hope you must have understood. We will continue the story, the chapter, in the another lecture. Thank you so much.